Kia ora, good evening. The flow of postal votes has slowed as the cut-off date for voting in this round of local body elections draws near. Invercargill Returning Officer Graham Lowe reports that 9,071 or 23.6% of voting papers have been returned. Mr Lowe is charged with counting votes for the Invercargill City Council, the Invercargill Licensing Trust, the Bluff Community Board and the Southland District Health Board. He says at the same stage of the voting process in 2010, 28% of the votes had been returned. Voting papers must be with the returning officer by midday, Saturday the 12th of October. Monthly meetings with community leaders and other agencies to formulate plans are one of the keys to the latest policing results for the region. Results that show our communities are safer, with less crimes being committed and crime resolution rates at an all-time high.
The last few years it's been sort of mid to high 50s, so the 60.5%, that's definitely very high nationally. The national average is just below 50%, so that's quite significant.
So what is it that's causing that trend to go up like that?
We've put quite a few different programs in place, and we'll talk about prevention soon, but basically our whole philosophy has changed and our whole team, the way we do the business. And so we're a lot more focused on victims and solving the crime, and that's why you'll see that 60.5%, that's actually what we're solving. So that's very significant.
So you are creating several prevention plans. Can you give us some explanation about what's involved there?
Just an example we're running at the moment is what we call Operation Cocoon. And so we have had an increase of dwelling burglaries in the Invercargill city area. And so Cocoon really is our staff going out and providing not only advice to the victims of the burglary, but we're actually going wider within that community or that street and giving crime security advice, and also just talking to local residents about perhaps suspicious behaviour. So it's just really going a lot wider than what we were doing in the past.
And what sort of advice are you giving people out there?
The main important one is to be security conscious, and so unfortunately what we do find is a lot of our reported burglaries and thefts from vehicles is people are actually leaving property unlocked. So first and foremost, really want to encourage people to lock their property. We do live in a safe city, but as we know, unfortunately a lot of our burglars are quite lazy, and so if they find a property that's unlocked, they're predominantly going to go and pick on that property versus something that's locked.
Has there been any change in what sort of materials burglars are uplifting?
Mainly it's electronic equipment, but also for us in Southland, in the farming community, four-wheel drive motorbikes is a big one, and also car trailers. So that's something we're working with in our rural community. We've got another prevention plan with that, linked in with other agencies in the insurance industry. The
police have been kitted out with iPhones and iPads recently. How's that impacting on policing?
Probably about 85% of the work that staff would traditionally do in a desk computer, they can actually be doing that with an iPad or an iPhone, which means they can be doing that out on the street. They don't have to come back to the office anymore. So what that means is we get on average 30 minutes per staff member per shift that we can reinvest, and that's what we're doing now, and that's around prevention taskings. So if we look at shoplifting, which again has been on the increase in Invercargill City, we've actually got people now patrolling those hot areas over specific times, and they can be doing that and still doing their work on their iPhone or their iPad. So it's a huge step forward for us.
So if you have more free time, you are reducing the number of crimes being committed in the city and the resolution rates going up. Do you think potentially it could affect staffing numbers for police in the long term?
That's certainly not the indication I've been given, because I've asked that question. But no, I've been given assurances that that's not the case. And so what we would hope to happen is, and bearing in mind we've had significant reductions in 3 years now, is that we would still think we've got work to do. So I still suspect that we will get even better targets this year that we're currently on. And if we look for the first 2 months of this financial year, we're already tracking at 21% reduction. That's on top of last year. So there's still work there to be done. And so yeah, I'm fairly confident we won't lose staff.
A school-based health program targeting cervical cancer and genital warts prevention is proving a success in the south with a decline in new cases. The HPV project offers 12-year-old or Year 8 females free vaccination against the wart virus or HPV in a bid to stop the spread of the extremely common sexually transmitted disease. In the south, over 1,000 girls have been vaccinated since 2009, and the roughly 70% uptake places local immunisation numbers ahead of the national average. The Southern District Health Board is very happy with how the program's going, with indications the number of reported cases of HPV is dropping.
I think it's a bit soon to be able to answer that question accurately. There are anecdotal suggestions of a decrease in the number of cases of genital warts, but it's probably too soon to be able to say that with any degree of accuracy.
Do you think that the campaign has helped to destigmatise STDs and HPV?
I'm sure it has. As people understand more about how some of those conditions occur, they can then take steps to protect themselves, and that's got to be a good thing.
Telecom is setting up wireless internet hotspots in 700 of their existing telephone boxes and expects to have 2,000 converted nationwide by June 2014. Usage of Telecom's phone boxes has steadily dropped off since the introduction of mobile phones 2 decades ago. The telecommunications company is making use of the underused centrally located assets by turning them into wireless hotspots. Telecom mobile users signed up to value pack plans will get a gigabyte of data per day free. Telecom prepaid 2 Degrees and Vodafone subscribers will pay a monthly fee for data. There are 4 phone boxes equipped to provide wireless data in Invercargill. Each have a transmitter installed. Stay with us, still to come, book borrowing goes high-tech and kids get sporty at the velodrome. Welcome back. Invercargill Public Library is moving with the times following the launch of a new self-checkout service. Changes in technology and library lending trends led to a services review that's included extending opening hours and retagging the library's entire collection to enable self-checkout. The library is also extending its range of e-books, including biographies, non-fiction and children's material, to keep up with technology demands. Staff say the self-checkout has been well embraced by book borrowers and has freed up staff to focus on developing other programs such as school holiday offerings. Invercargill City Chief Executive Richard King is confident democracy will rule when the Mayor recommends councillors for committee positions or deputy mayoralty. Central Government had proposed mayors have the power to make such appointments themselves unilaterally. Mr King believes the provision targeted the new council in Auckland, and there would be no change to the way such appointments are made in the city, regardless of who's mayor following this month's election.
Well, I think they were looking primarily at the Auckland model, where the mayor has his own office, and obviously Auckland, you were having about 7 local authorities condensed into one, and I think the government thought at that stage that, you know, the mayor should have extra powers. But when you look at the powers that they've set down, then as far as the Invercargill City Council is concerned, we're operating and have been for a number of years no differently than in comparison to those new powers. In other words, we're doing a lot of them already.
So do you think the government's intention was to baby Auckland through that process with all those 7 authorities coming together and all those different heads of committees, to baby them through the process for that first term?
Well, I think so, and Auckland obviously had a lot of issues and problems, and clearly the government wanted a set direction, and they wanted strong leadership. So they've decided, whatever they did in Auckland, to extend those powers throughout New Zealand.
So nothing changes here. The mayor, whoever that may be after the 12th, they don't just wake up and go, well, I want such and such heading that committee, I want such and such heading that committee, and I want such and such as deputy mayor. That's not what will happen. Well,
what has worked in the past is a consensus. We live in a democracy, so what happens is that the mayor will sit down with all the successful candidates, and he will ask them what their interests are, what committees they might like to be on. He will ask them, are they happy with who should be deputy mayor, and then when he gets that consensus, what happens, he'll then write a report to the council, which is always considered at the inaugural meeting. And in the past, that has had minimal debate, because the consensus is already there.
School holiday activities are keeping children entertained in the south this week, and there's plenty of action to keep small hands and feet busy at the velodrome. Sports Southland offer a holiday program with a range of sports for the younger generation, and this week at Invercargill's velodrome there's something for everyone, including football. Scottish football coach Josh Henderson is in the south for 6 months and is sharing his footwork skills this week with Southern football fans, although tennis and cycling are also proving popular choices. Almost 600 children will attend this week's program before Sports Southland take it mobile with programs in Te Anau, Winton and Riverton next week. SBS Bank Invercargill branch manager Scott Bowden says there was no rush to secure home loans ahead of yesterday's introduction of loan restrictions. Mr Bowden believes the days of borrowing 100% of a property's value are gone and home buyers can expect to at least pay a minimum 10% deposit. Hunter Andrews asked him about the impact of the Reserve Bank's new regulations.
So far we haven't seen any difference. I mean, it's only been a couple of days, but for first home buyers certainly they'll notice a difference because gone are the days of borrowing 100%. First home buyers definitely have to have a minimum of a 10% deposit nowadays. We haven't seen a great rush come in, but we're expecting it. We are doing lending for first home buyers. So it's just a change of educating people out there that they have to have a 10% deposit minimum for their first home.
Prior to yesterday, was there a bit of a rush? We're led to believe in the media that a lot of people would be rushing to get home loans before these restrictions.
We certainly haven't seen a rush. I mean, we've certainly been busy lending lately. We've got some very good interest rates, so we've been flat tack lending, not just to first home buyers, but across the board. Not a great rush, steady as it goes. But these restrictions will certainly put a dampener on people coming in, so they just have to have savings.
My parents' generation, they expected to save a quarter or a third to their first house. What's wrong with that, learning how to save?
Oh, that's the thing. It's a great habit to learn, to get into, is to save. Whether it be for your first home or for a house or for retirement, it's great to get into the habit of savings. As I say, in our parents' generation, you're expected to have a deposit for your house. In the last few years, you haven't had to. And again, it's now just re-educating people out there that they need a deposit for a house, whether that be their own savings or taking money out of KiwiSaver where they can for first home purchases. It's just getting into the habit of savings. And I think it's a great thing, personally.
Next on Sport, we preview the Stags game tomorrow night against Hawke's Bay in Invercargill. From the news team, good night.